Hello, and welcome to another episode of the How to Scale a Business podcast. My name is Hector Santiesteban, and I am your host today. And we're here with Ron Imbach, and he's the executive director of the International Association of U.S. Government Contractors. And we're going to talk about how someone can get paid today and get paid perhaps handsomely, because he focuses on helping businesses get federal contracts, which I know that's kind of like the holy grail for some businesses, right? That's kind of like the Series A funding. It's these big contracts that can make or break some businesses. So anyways, Ron, all that to say, thank you for hanging out and spending some time with us.
Of course. Glad to be here.
I'm curious how someone, I'd imagine that there is a world of experience that comes along with that, but how does someone get into that world? And then I'd love to know how you kind of started to help businesses to start doing this as well. Can you give us the backstory a little bit?
Yeah. I've been a consultant coach for over 35 years. Long, big businesses, small businesses, startups, seasoned businesses, the whole nine yards. But I'd been a coach for just really coaching all kinds of businesses for probably close to 10 years. And about 3.5 years ago, I got together with one of those brainstorming, masterminding buddies of mine who had a lot of success in business. And I had already done a little bit of work with him in federal contracting. And we started to brainstorm about what he was doing, what I was doing. And a little light bulb went off, and I had a bit of an epiphany that wouldn't this be a great way to distinguish me as a coach? Because I've suddenly got this way of helping businesses get federal contracts that most business coaches don't do. They don't touch this. And here I had an expert who had built businesses, including this one, to help small businesses get federal contracts. So we kind of joined forces, me thinking, well, I'll still kind of do my coaching stuff, and then I'll do this as well. But it just made so much sense to focus on businesses in our top 40 industries that are in the greatest demand for federal contracts and just really form a business together. And that's what we did. I became the executive director of the number 2 person with the International Association. We also formed another company called the Center for Business Innovation that offers a number of other ways besides federal contracts to help businesses make money, save money on their taxes, have cost savings. We have programs like that. So the goal of both of our programs is to make a lot of money, generate a lot of revenue with federal contracts, nice, steady, recession-proof way to have another income stream coming in for a business. But then in addition to that, with the other company, save more of it, put more in your pocket so that it's not just generating revenue, but you're generating higher profits as well.
I'm curious, Ron, you mentioned that a lot of business coaches don't have this in their arsenal. I would imagine that most business owners aren't even considering this as a form of revenue. And I'm wondering if it's because it is actually out of reach for most businesses and something that only a certain sector or certain size, or, there are some qualifications someone should kind of look before they start putting time into it, or if it's just because they don't know and it's just kind of an ignorance thing that's preventing people from pursuing this. Is it one of those, or is it something else?
It is both of those, and there's other things as well. Here's one of the ways I explain it. In order to do business with the federal government, we've all filled out tax returns. We just did them last month, right? In order to do business with the federal government, you got to go about it and follow their rules. Same way if you complete a tax return. You may not think, I shouldn't have to claim this as income. I should be able to claim this as an expense. That's okay, unless the IRS disagrees, right? So it's the same way with federal contracting. You have to, with the phrase we use is show up properly. Showing up properly to be procurement ready for the federal government. Procurement ready means you can be a primary contractor on a federal government contract, procurement ready. And they spend a lot of money every year. Last year, almost $675 billion on procurement contracts. That's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of zeros on there. So what a lot of businesses don't do, they don't show up properly. They don't do the proper registrations. They don't have the proper materials. There's something called a capability statement with the federal government. It's your resume to get federal contracts. If you don't have it set up properly, if you make mistakes in the capability statement, they're not even going to talk to you. They're not even going to listen to you, okay? Because you got to have that. And a lot of people might say, well, I've done a great job. I've been in business for 20 years. Wonderful. But if you don't have any federal experience and you don't go about it step by step the right way, you're not showing up properly and you're not going to get federal contracts. Part two of that, which is related to kind of what you said as well. It is a little complicated. And in addition to showing up properly, let's paint it like this. And I use this comparison all the time. Let's picture a house with a bunch of doors. Let's say there are 100 doors on the house. Each one of those doors represents a different way that you can get federal contracts. All right. Now, but all those doors are not open to every business all the time. Okay. Many of them have to do with what are called set-asides. The government wants to give contracts to certain, for example, a business is located in a hub zone, or a certified veteran-owned business, or a women-owned business. Okay. So those types of set-asides aren't open to everyone. Okay. If they really want to give the contract to those people. There are other contracts that if you don't have experience, you're really wasting your time submitting a bid on those contracts. Okay. So, and what a lot of businesses will do, a lot of businesses will go to a website with a lot of federal contracts and just start, I'm going to submit 20 contracts this month and another 20 contracts next month with no experience and without knowing the contracting officer, the buyers, the end users. And when they do that, guess what happens? They continue to get turned down. They don't get the contracts. And then those folks who haven't, using our phrase, haven't shown up properly, then what do? They go to every business they know, or they get on shows like yours or whatever and say, you shouldn't even bother with federal contracts. They're not for small businesses. They're only for big businesses. Don't even give it a shot. And when a lot of people hear that, whether they read it or whether they hear it or whether it's a friend, they go, why am I going to waste my time trying to get federal contracts? They're only for the big guys. They're only for Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Northrop Grumman and all those big contracts I hear about on television and read about in the newspaper. That's not the case. The federal government would like to work with small businesses. Unfortunately, small businesses often don't show up properly, or they listen to what I'm going to call federal contracting myths and misinformation. So much of what you said about, I didn't use the word ignorance. We try not to use that because some folks will misinterpret that when I say it, but you're absolutely right. Misinformation that's out there that people believe is often the reason they don't get the contracts that, quite frankly, the federal government would like to give the majority of their contracts, procurement contracts, to small businesses. How about that?
Well, yes, and you're right. I know people get a little weird about the ignorant thing, but I mean, for me, ignorance is just not knowing.
It's just what it is. That's the definition.
It's just not. And I think that with this, you talked about there's 100 doors, right? So without someone like you, how do you know which door to approach? Or if you're sitting there and you're trying to unlock it, not knowing that, obviously someone should and go work with you and your association and things like that, because that's going to be the quickest and the fastest route. But if someone wanted to start getting their ducks in order or start thinking about showing up right, are there some key buckets or pillars or kind of some foundational things that people can start to do? I know you kind of mentioned some stuff. I'm wondering, even before that, right, or to try and take out the obstacles or objections that people have, how someone might better prepare themselves to show up right. Is that even possible?
Well, you can, but I will say this. The good thing about when I say show up right or show up properly, you can do that even if you're a startup business. I know I talked about experience, but if you show up properly, and something we tell all of our clients, because a lot of folks think they just go to a bid site and just start grabbing bids and submitting bids. And they'll get, after a very short period of time, and submitting maybe 20, 30, 40 bids that can average 80 plus pages long. And when they're not getting those, they get kind of frustrated, right? Because you've invested a lot of time and you're not winning anything. Okay. So showing up properly is all about relationships as well. Okay. You got to have your ducks in a row. You've got to have the proper, something called a cage code number. You submit a SAM worksheet and a SAM registration. To get a cage code number, you get your profile on the SBA website, okay, so that people can find you. That's very, very important. Those things are not that complicated to prepare. Don't take a lot of time. Federal government doesn't even charge you. Okay. So there aren't huge barriers to entry, but unfortunately, they either don't fill those out, kind of what I've mentioned before. And then the second part of that is they don't build relationships. And that's something a lot of people don't talk about. There are buyers for the US government, federal government, and end users are people just like you and me. And the same way you build relationships in business, I build relationships in business and have done it for a long time. You have to build relationships with federal decision makers as well. Because I'm just going to give you an example. If you go on to sam.gov and pull a contract off of there and submit a bid, maybe it's an 80-page bid, let's just say, and you have no federal experience and you do not know the contracting officer, okay? What do you think the odds are that you're going to get selected for that?
Almost none.
Yeah, slim and none, okay? However, if you don't have any federal experience, but you know the contracting officer, you've gotten to know them, you've become a valued, trusted resource for them, you have knowledge of your industry, they can see your capability statement, they know what you've done in the past, even if you don't have federal experience. They're still going to be a little nervous, but if you have the relationship, they'll give you a test. A test is also known as a sole source contract, okay, or a no bid contract, which we specialize in. We help people with no bid contracts and with contracts that you bid on. That's what our company does. Okay. So we've kind of got two tracks going there. All right. And if you're building relationships, you have no chance of getting no bid contracts without relationships. Forget it. Okay. No one's going to give to you, a federal decision maker is not going to share with you their no bid contract list that's not publicly posted any place because it's a no bid. There's no competition on those. They're not going to show you that. But then even on the bid side, if they know you, you're much more likely to get considered and get a bid accepted than if you don't know the contract. So it's all about, with us, relationships. Like it is, quite frankly, isn't it like that in business? Isn't it like that in life? Isn't it like that when you see the pretty girl, when you walk in the store and you want to talk to her? You go up, you start talking, you start a relationship. Okay, it's all about relationships. And these people with the federal government, they're not monsters. They're not terrible people. They like relationships. They want to get to know the businesses that they're going to work with. Okay, especially on no bid contracts. They have to get to know you, have to feel comfortable, have to think that you're a valued resource for them. And then they'll give you a shot. Now, if you do a bad job on any federal contract, you might be out of federal contracting for good, especially early on. Got to always do a good job, get a good rating. But if you do that, there's a very good chance they're going to give you more contracts.
So I'm going to defer to you to maybe pick the direction for the rest of the conversation, because it seems like from what I'm hearing that these contracts are more accessible than people realize. And I'm assuming there's a checklist and you've got to cross your T's and dot your I's and you've got to make sure that you do these things, but they are more accessible than people realize. And so I'm wondering if it's helpful to start talking about some more things like bid and no bid to give people a bigger lay of the landscape so they can kind of see where they might be able to fit in, or if there's more to talk about where even before that, right? Like if there's more things that they need to get lined up, but even before this process, I'm just kind of curious where you think is kind of the next place to kind of go.
Well, before anyone even thinks about federal, let's say a typical business has never done any federal contracting. Okay. What I always ask businesses, what are you afraid of? What are you concerned? If we happen to go into a deep recession, which we might, we always do. Look at history, look at the economy. We're going to go in a deep recession again. Okay, whether we're in one right now, whether we were in one a few years ago with the pandemic, whether you consider high inflation, high unemployment, whatever the case may be. We hear this all the time from businesses that inflation scares them. Okay, inflation scares them because it cuts profit margins. We hear on a regular basis from businesses, I'm afraid that if we go into a deep recession, I'm not going to get paid on time. Okay, We hear those kinds of concerns constantly. We hear supply chain issues, okay, that people in construction or in other types of industries are not getting what they need to do the business they need to do, or things are getting delayed. And when they get delayed, often the prices go up. So once again, cuts profit margin. And if you're in a recession and people are cutting back anyway, you don't want to have your profit margin cut. So if any of those things are frightening you or keeping businesses awake at night, consider federal contracting. Because federal contracting, I'm going to compare it to, I'm going to go back to 2008. Okay, the last big recession we had. That was technically a bad recession. All right. In 2008, people, most of the time, were doing the work that, like I was in business in 2008. We were doing the business we wanted to do, but or doing what a good job at what we did. But quite frankly, we often there was a little bit of this uneasiness in the background. Okay, is this sustainable? Okay, is the economy going to continue to do well? What happened? And that was like 06, 07, going into 08. Then we got to 08 and just got blasted. Okay, because people stopped paying. Essentially, businesses that their revenue started to come down wanted to keep their profits as high as possible, maybe even maintain. And if it's simple math, if your revenue is coming down and you want to keep your profits the same, what's the only thing to do? You've got to cut your cost.
Right.
And if you cut the cost, and for small businesses are often working with big businesses. Okay, they're a vendor for them. And if big businesses are like, we want to keep our profits, so we've decided to delay a certain purchase this year. We've decided not to do this. Or they may even say, we're going to purchase it, but you better sharpen your pencils because we better get the best deal we can possibly. And what sharpen your pencils mean to a business? Cut your profits, cut your profit margin. Okay. So that's what happens in recessions. Even if you've got great Fortune 500 clients, you're still going to get pinched. There's no question about it. And what we tell our clients, the great thing about the federal government is they're the biggest customer anyone can have in the entire world, the U.S. federal government. They spend money all the time on everything. Okay. And when you're in a recession, they're actually going to pump even more money into a recessionary economy. So if you're worried about getting paid slowly, if you're worried about inflation or maybe an upcoming recession, if you're worried about supply chain issues, why not have an income source? Because I never tell any business, only go straight 100% to federal contracts, don't do anything else. They decide to do that, fine, but that's usually not the case. What I tell them is diversify. Once upon a time, I was a financial advisor as well. I used to preach diversification in investments all the time to my clients. I tell our business clients now, and I tell groups when I speak to them, just diversify. Doesn't mean you've got to turn everything over and just do federal contracting, but diversify. Okay? Have this as another income stream that literally could recession-proof your business, because the federal government spends money all the time, but they spend even more in a recession, and they would like to help small businesses who show up properly stay in business, because business failure rate's horrible. So
this is fantastic. We're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I'm curious if there's any faux pas or I would love to hear some either huge wins or tragic failures, because I think we can learn from both of them. And so, Ron, we're going to get into that right when we get back from break.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's episode is brought to you by Amplify Media, and we are a podcast and content production company. So if you have a mission, a message, a passion, purpose, something that you want to get out to the world, but don't have the time, tech skills, or the team to be able to do it, we can help. Go to amplifymedia.com. That's AMPLAFY media.com. You can also check the show notes for the link. And with that, let's get back to today's episode. So, Ron, I'm curious, when you look back on your journey, perhaps one is easier to share than the other, but I'm curious if there's any huge success stories, huge wins, grand slams, or tragic failures that went down in a ball of flames. But I'm just curious, because we've been talking about how people just are so uninformed about this. I'm wondering if there's anything like that that might continue to open up people's eyes about what's possible, or even just some things to consider when going down this path.
Sure. Well, I love to be positive and talk about the big win. So I'll bring that out first, but I probably got a couple of funny stories on the other side as well. Well, not funny, maybe tragic funny, that kind of funny. Okay. So a big win. We had a client, it's been a few years ago, but they had a landscaping lawn care service business in Florida. Okay. In fact, a lot of our clients are in Florida because my partner was based in Florida for first 13 years that he was in business. Our company's been in business for over 15 now. So anyway, this one client had no idea that of like the airports in Florida, almost every one of them have a piece under the towers at the airports that is owned by the federal government. I guess the FAA owns it. So anyway, I actually didn't work with this client, but I've heard this story before. And the great thing about it was it just kind of a contract fell into the lap of one of our clients. And it was $1 million. And this, I believe, was his first or maybe his second contract. Now, this is don't assume this happens with federal contracting. It is not a get rich quick thing. Most of the time, the contracts that our clients get, the first ones, are $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Okay. But occasionally something like this happens. And I'll give you one more after this as well. But this person landed $1 million contract, and all they did was drive around to these different airports, a lot of little airports that had a small portion of the airport. I think it was under the towers, okay, where they were open. So there was grass. All they did was mow the grass under the towers. That was federal property. And I want to say the contract maybe was a 2, 3, 4-year contract, but it was easy work. Okay, it's not like it was up and down hills. It was easy work. And $1 million contract just to mow the grass under towers at airports. Okay. Guy said easiest work he's ever done. All right. So that's one good one. We had another painter, and it was, again, he hadn't gotten many contracts, but he happened to land a painting job for a military base. Well, you know how many buildings are on typical military bases. And he got around $1 million or $1.2 million for a contract just for painting one military base. So he kept 4 or 5 teams busy for 6, 8 months, just painting inside, outside, roofs, posts, fences, the whole 9 yards. And both of those, again, please, any listener out there, don't assume it's get rich quick. It's not. You got to build relationships. Having said that, though, those things do happen. The other success story is some of your viewers may be aware that the federal government has a use it or lose it budget. Okay. So if at the end of their fiscal year, they have not spent all the money in their budget, they lose it. So a way that our clients and other people that I've known over the years have made a lot of money in federal contracting, they'll have a federal agency that they get a contract with. And it will be a contract that when they cost it out, they're like, well, I can do that for $75,000, $100,000. Why are they paying me $125,000 or $150,000? Now, that may sound bad, like it's wasteful, but it's actually that agency or that buyer saying, I don't want to lose my budget for next year. I don't want to lose $25,000, $50,000, because if they do it on a contract here, it'll be on a contract there and another one, another. Pretty soon we're talking they could lose $1 million or whatever in their budget. So how that benefits small businesses is, again, you may get a contract that you know that you can fulfill the contract, make a good profit for $75,000, but you've just been paid $110,000. So you've got a bonus $35,000 profit because they had to use. It's not that they were stupid and overpaid you. They just knew they had to use the budget or they were going to lose it for next year. That's very important. That's what keeps profits pretty high on federal contracts, things like that. And for federal contracts, you don't have to accept every contract that comes along. If it's a dog of a contract and you got a bad profit margin, don't take it. It's okay with the federal government. So now, did I promise you a bad story as well? Do you want to hear one or not?
Well, maybe if just to temper people's expectations and give them a dose of all sorts of realities.
Oh, no. I mean, we have clients right today that I try to manage expectations by telling them, by building relationships, don't plan on coming in and making a phone call and getting someone saying, Eureka, I've just been sitting by the phone waiting for you to call. This is not a lovesick high school girl waiting for someone to call them on the phone. Okay. Your viewers will probably make comments about that, about me making some kind of comment along those lines. But I'm an old guy, so I still remember those times on the telephone. But anyway, but my point in telling you that is that it takes 4 to 6 months, and to get a contract, 12 to 16 or more contacts to get a federal contract. So I'd say most people in business would tell you, okay, it usually takes 8 to 12 for a typical commercial private sector client. Add about another 33% or so contacts you have to have with a federal contact in order to get that contract. I know I've been using contacts and contracts. Hopefully I didn't mess any of those up. But anyway, it takes even more contact to get a federal contract. Okay, so you've got to build the relationships in a number of different ways. Once you get them and they find a reliable small business that'll do a great job, literally they can give you 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 contracts. What we like to tell our clients, if you have 2 to 4 federal contacts that start on a regular basis giving you contracts, they will keep you busy, as busy as you want to be. Okay. You don't need 100 of them giving you contracts. You just need 2, 3, or 4, because once they find a reliable small business, they want to give the contracts to small businesses anyway. So once they find a good one, guess what? Hey, can you do this? Hey, you might even be a landscaper. They might say, I need a roofing job. Do you think you could figure that out for us? You go find a roofing company and you team with them. You're making money and a roofing company's making money as well. Okay, so you don't even have to stay in your own industry. You don't even have to stay in your own geographic area. There's lots of ways to make money in federal contracting. If you do it the right way, you build good relationships and you do a good job. They want good small businesses to work with.
Yeah, I think this whole conversation has been important, and really the wrong word is to position it, right? But really just to open up people's eyes as this is another avenue. Like any of the other channels for generating revenue, very, very legal avenues are get-rich-quick schemes, right? This can be approached in the same way to treat it with the right kind of time and runway and patience and all the things that you would put into a normal acquisition channel. I think it's just something that most businesses are not paying attention to. And in that regard, there's some ability to kind of win in the margins there. This is fantastic. I know this is kind of what you do, is you educate people on this. And so if people want to go and learn more, I know we gave them kind of a very high level, maybe surface kind of overview. If they want to go deeper, can they do that? Is there somewhere they can go and find out more?
Absolutely. Our 2 main websites for our company is www.fedprofits.com, FEDPROFITS.com. That's our main website for the International Association. We also have another website. I mentioned our second company, Center for Business Innovation, focuses on tax and cost savings for business clients. Now, in that situation with that website, that's at www.superchargeprofits.com. Charge, CHARGE, profits, PROFITS.com. And then once you go on there, you also see classes we have called master classes. So if you're thinking, would this be a good opportunity for me? Could this be a good fit for me? I'd like to know the numbers, the stats on whether this would be a good business fit. You can check out one of our master classes, 2-hour class, a lot of great information. If you like that, okay, and you go, I think this would be a good fit for me, then you can check out one of our workshops where we'll go through exactly what we do in our programs, and you can learn. And then, quite frankly, the great thing about it is they're all risk-free. So if you come to our masterclass and go, federal contract's not for me, we'll give you your money back. If you come to our workshop and you say, I don't like doing it like that, this isn't a good fit, whatever, we'll give you your money back. We're not in the business of trying to pull clients along as we try to help them get contracts. It's too much heavy lifting for us. It's too much effort. Okay. We want to help businesses that are excited about growing their business, taking it to another level, can see the potential, the opportunity. I'll just give you just one little side note, but here's the opportunity in federal contracting. Okay. All federal contracts of 150,000 or less are set aside for small businesses. That's over 90% of all procurement contracts. Okay. And only 6.7% are awarded to small businesses. Okay. So if anyone ever asked me when I used to be a coach and not focus on this, is there any potential? Are there clients for me? I'm going to do market research. I'm going to do these other things. I'm saying to businesses like that, well, let's see, over 93% of the contracts that the federal government wants to give to small businesses, they end up giving them to large businesses because they don't have enough good small businesses to work with. So if you're a good small business, you show up properly, you build relationships, there's incredible potential with the. We'll do another one just to prove the point as well. Out of the total amount that's set aside for small businesses from a revenue perspective, 25% of the revenue that the federal government would like to give to small businesses in the form of contracts, only 25% goes to small businesses. 75% goes to big businesses. Okay. So if you can say, and I know we both know this phrase quite well in business, money left on the table. There are billions and billions of dollars left on the table every year that small businesses could get. And quite frankly, those nasty facts about business failures and the high percentage of business failures, it wouldn't completely change that picture, but it would have a huge impact if small businesses just got what the federal government would like to give them. Show up properly, build relationships. When you get the contracts, do a good job.
So good. I want to thank all of you listeners for sticking with us. Go and get tapped into that masterclass. That sounds very, very informative. And especially just because of what we've been talking about and that people are so uninformed that I think that it is just could be a huge, huge opportunity. If there is someone that you know that is in the midst of growing or scaling their business, please send them this episode and then come connect with Rob and myself on LinkedIn. I know that's where we got connected. And otherwise, we appreciate as always for being a part of the tribe. We'll see you on the next one. Later, y'all.